Welcome back to Looking Forth, the channel brought to you by Fourth Horizon & Co. and our network of creatives and makers, design thinkers and unthinkers, futurists and digital transformers, all with a common purpose of helping organizations like yours find new forms of value at the intersection of business and technology. This time, Prompt Library, the basics and the benefits, part of our series on addressing the AI leadership gap. In this session, we'll do three main things. First, the what. What is a prompt library? Two, a walkthrough of an example, and finally, the why and the how and the role of a prompt library as a critical part of your generative AI adoption strategy. Let's get to it. So what is a prompt library and why should you use one? You might also hear the term prompt catalog. This is the same thing and simply a different name. Personally, I prefer prompt library as it implies a growing body of knowledge collected and curated over time. In its most basic sense, it is what it says, a library of yours and your team's prompts. All those well-crafted prompts that you spent time writing, improving, and using. You might have used something like Gemini's Gems, and whilst you find it useful for you, you also really want to share that perfect prompt with your teammates and friends. This is where a prompt library fills the gap. Think of it as a pipeline for your prompts, and later we'll talk about why this is so useful for generative AI adoption in your organization. Let's switch over to an example built using Microsoft Power Platform, using the template from April Dunham, link in the show notes. Anybody familiar with access development, where we had a common pattern to separate the front-end user experience from the data? This will seem very familiar and similar. We'll start with the configuration and some very simple tables. Categories are the logical groupings, where you simply group your prompts together so it's easier to search for them going forward. Products, these are the experiences where your end users will typically use that prompt and interact with some kind of a large language model. Here you'll see an example using Salesforce Agentforce. Could be the common ones, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, or it could even be an app or an applet. I've actually spent some time working with an organization that had decided to build their own apps based on service line, whether that's audit or tax, consulting, or transaction services. And essentially what they had done is used Azure OpenAI service so they could actually host a large language model inside the environment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about governance later on. Equally, you could be using something like Cortex from Snowflake that allows you to simply control your models and build out what you would consider as a product. The key thing here is it is flexible enough that a product can mean whatever it means in the context of your organization and inside your knowledge management strategy. Touch briefly on favorites. This again is something that is unique to a prompt library, and it is not another way of really retrieving prompts. As we say, you mark it as your favorite, and you'll see then a quicker way to access those prompts. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about models. This is the area that will change the most often. If you look in the list I have here, I've got everything from Gemini 1.5 Pro through to Gemini 2.5 Pro. And that really tells you what you need to know about the models. They change so fast. I can no longer access Gemini 1.5 Pro. The common user interface with Gemini is 2.5 Flash or 2.5 Pro. And you'll see how this works. And this is how you think about your pipeline of your models. What are the model versions you're testing right now? What are the models you're using that you daily interaction with prompts? And what are you no longer using? So think of this as having a status where models will be turned on and turned off depending on where you are in your testing cycle. Let's talk about the main reason we have this in the first place, which is the library. So in here, you'll see a short name. You'll see a category and a product, as we discussed in terms of retrieval. You'll see the prompt, and that really is the entire body of the prompt that you'll use inside the large language model. And you might have some usage notes. But the usage notes becomes useful really when you start thinking about maybe you're looking for a desired outcome, some guidance on when and when not to use it, and really think about the role of that inside your trusted AI strategy as well. So now that we've discussed the back end, let's actually switch over and have a look at what most users will see on a daily basis. So a very simple layout, 3 columns. Left-hand side, you have the categories and the products, and I'll use that in a minute to filter down this middle list, which is all of the prompts that exist in the prompt library. Over on the far right, you then have the short name, the prompt body, any categories and products, and any usage notes. So let's, in this case, we'll use customer research. We'll filter down that middle list and we'll end up with 6 prompts. In this case, this is designed to be a turn by turn. I won't go into the specifics of how that's used and how I've structured any of those prompts. And what I'm going to do is simply show you how we use the prompt library and interact with the product. There is another video on actually all of these prompts used in earnest, and you'll find a link to that later on. So let's have a look at who is my step one, who is my customer. And so you can see here the short name, you can see the entire body of the prompt. In this case, we've got a category and a product. I'll draw your attention to the top right. This icon tells me that I've marked this as my personal favorite, one of my favorites, and that's another way of helping me retrieve. And this button here, this is the real reason why we are using a prompt library in the first place. The ability to copy all of that body of that prompt into a clipboard and paste it into the product that we're looking to use. Now, I know there are many other ways of doing a prompt library. I've seen people use spreadsheets. I've seen people use SharePoint sites. I've seen people who try to use GitHub. I've seen people even use slides. They work. The danger is that you don't always copy the entire body of the prompt. Worse, you edit it or inadvertently delete it. And therefore, everybody loses access to that prompt going forward. So here, we're simply going to hit copy. And as we can see, that's been put into the clipboard. So next, we're going to go into Gemini, paste that in directly in, and hit go. I'm going to type in a customer name, something you're all familiar with, IKEA, or as we spell it here in Thailand, IKEA. And it'll go off and do its research. While it's doing that, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to grab the next prompt, step 2. Why do we need to change? Again, come in, copy the entirety of that prompt. It's now finished. Paste that prompt into the window and complete what it's asking me to do and hit go. If I wanted to, I could come back into the prompt library and repeat this process over and over. But what I'm seeing here is a consistent use of the prompt, and I'm getting the desired outcome. So we've seen an example. Now let's talk about the benefits, the how and the why. When you're trying to drive GenAI adoption, my experience has shown we have to tackle 2 separate obstacles. First, the AI leadership gap. This is where your executive team are not using generative AI on a daily basis, don't know how to use it in a meaningful and impactful way, or worse, don't see the value of it. Over the last 2 years, most of my conversations at this level in organizations have been dominated by 2 main fears. FOMO, the fear of missing out. My competitors are doing it, so I need to. And FOGI, the fear of getting in and getting it wrong. And typically that shows up in roughly equal parts. Secondly, at the same time, much of the adoption is still bottom up and often hiding in the shadows where people are using free consumer-based options like ChatGPT and you don't even know about it. This is where a good prompt library can also be hugely helpful. If you have an AI guild or an AI center of excellence that can craft good prompts that create the desired impact, help drive consistent use and make it visible, as such, a good library is a key part of your trusted AI strategy. This also better supports parallel use. Think the sensitive or more controlled use that you want to happen in a hosted model, where you can control things like temperature, max K and max P, to drive that consistency and that quality of the outcomes you're looking for from those prompts, versus some things that you're okay farming out to a consumer experience. All of this well supported by a well-planned prompt library. Additionally, it is easy to gamify a library to get secondary value. Who is the most prolific contributor? Balancing quantity and quality of prompts created. MVP, most valuable prompt. Who created that prompt that so many people are tagging as a favorite? You could even consider using a rating system to get more utility out of such a system. And that AI leadership gap we're speaking about, which C-level execs are contributing, liking, and using, and are publicly talking about the value of generative AI in their day-to-day tasks. So that's it. We've spoken about the basics. We've shown you an example of a prompt library, and we've talked through the main benefits of starting something like this in your organization. There's really no complicated technology at play here, but the benefit to your generative AI strategy will be significant. If you found this interesting or useful, please like and consider subscribing. We welcome any questions, feedbacks and comments. It helps us help you. Don't forget to check the show notes for further information and any links referred to in this show. Do feel free to connect with me or us, QR codes and URLs to LinkedIn right after this. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Original audio created using Refusion AI, intro video using Google VO, post-production editing in DaVinci Resolve, all by me, David Mott.